I played Final Fantasy VI on the Super Nintendo, back when they told us it was called Final Fantasy III. Even as a kid, I recognized that this game was something incredibly special. Between this and Final Fantasy IV, Chrono Trigger, Super Mario RPG, Breath of Fire 2, and Secret of Mana, the RPG genre cemented itself as one that I would hold in the highest regard throughout my life. I still occasionally buy RPGs sight unseen, in spite of the fact that more of them are misses than hits for me these days. Still, I often think about the games I really loved back in the day, and wonder whether or not they would hold up now that I've played countless other games and have the context of years of experience and knowledge that I didn't have before. Some games, like Mega Man, don't hold the same spell over me they once did, and others like Super Metroid still stand tall as heavyweight contenders in my top games of all time. Before I set out to make this video, I hadn't touched Final Fantasy VI in over a decade. I really wanted to see if it was the masterpiece I remembered it to be, or if it was pure nostalgia keeping it afloat in my mind. Now that I've played it more recently, I would say not only does it hold up, but there are things I appreciate about it now that my younger self never did. I was always wrapped up in the superficial aspects of the game. Things like the Magitech armor and the airship are what stuck out in my mind the most, and the vaguely steampunk style of the artwork really captured my imagination. All I had to know was that chocobos and moogles were cute, and monsters and espers were cool. That's not to say that I didn't understand the plot. I just don't think I quite grasped it. The fact that it was a very bleak game didn't go over my head, but ultimately, the tone was overshadowed by the fun adventure with really cool heroes. Who can be sad when you have a ninja on your team, or when Edgar puts on the Friday the 13th mask when he uses the chainsaw? The version of me that lived in 1994 hadn't really experienced anything in life like melancholy. In Final Fantasy VI, the heroes band together and use their collective strength to stop a villain, but it isn't about banding together and using your collective strength to stop a villain. It's about picking up the pieces of your life after everything falls apart. The entire first half of the game builds up to the destruction of the world. There could be no version of this game without this outcome, because it's not about saving the world. It's about leaning on your friends and mustering the will inside yourself to not give up. Every character has reasons they feel lost and reasons to give up on everything. I'll admit, not everyone gets the same level of an intensely emotional story arc. An example of a relatively thin character is Strago. At the end of the game, when our band of misfits triumphantly declare to the villain their reasons for fighting, Strago says, "I have a special little granddaughter," which is fine. That's not as intense as, say, Cyan, who declares, "My family lives on inside of me." This is because his entire kingdom was poisoned, and he has to live with the fact that, as the most skilled and respected warrior in Doma, he was powerless to protect his wife, son, and king. Later, he watches his family silently board the Phantom Train to usher their souls into the afterlife without him. After the world's destruction and losing all of his friends, he pours himself into a misguided but well-meaning attempt to spare a woman the same grief he suffered by writing her letters pretending to be her dead boyfriend. And then later, his friends have to enter the spirit realm to vanquish a demon living inside of him, feeding off of the long-term emotional torment he suffered. He learns to grieve appropriately and puts his energy toward embracing life, friends, and protecting the world from evil. But you know, Strago loves his precocious granddaughter. To be fair to the Strago fans out there, I don't hate him, or any of the cast really. He has a bit of a plot where he doesn't want to be considered a relic because of his age. It's just that he and some of the others do not get the in-depth attention that some of the core characters get. My personal favorite character was always Setzer, the cool gambler guy with the airship. Ignore the fact that he was introduced into the story trying to kidnap an opera singer so he can marry her. We were okay with some really weird stuff back in the day. He does get a sad backstory about how his girlfriend disappeared after crashing her airship. It's sad, and it makes him sympathetic, it is sufficient for his part in the story. Final Fantasy VI is one of those few RPGs that sort of leans on the idea that there isn't really any main character. It's more of an ensemble situation, so naturally, not everyone gets the same amount of time and work put into their story. Something I appreciated is how much work was put into Terra and Celes. The game is essentially split into 2 acts, the first being the World of Balance. We come into this act with Terra as our lead, and she remains the central focus for much of the first half. Then, Kefka destroys the world, and sends us into the second act, the World of Ruin, where Celes becomes our anchor. If this was a movie, Terra and Celes would be top billed in the credits, because I believe they received the strongest and most important characterization. The story of these 2 women embody the theme of Final Fantasy VI, which I think is the rejection of the nihilistic belief that life has no meaning. Act 1 starts with Terra being enslaved as a weapon for the Empire, and she's been their property ever since her birth. Once she's broken free of the mind control, her life has no direction. She's given a direction by Locke, and agrees to help the Returners oppose the Empire. But I don't think it's because she believes in their cause. For her, it's side with the Returners or be hunted down and captured again. She doesn't understand herself or where she came from. And when she does find out that she's half human and half Esper, she's so far removed from both worlds that she fears being unable to form real, deep connections with others. Since she grew up as a captive, she's always unsure of whether or not people care about her or only need to use her magical abilities as a means to their own ends. After the world is destroyed, Terra finds herself in a village decimated by Kefka, where all the adults perished, leaving the children and a couple of teens to fend for themselves. She steps into that role of provider for them, and she tells the team that it's caused her to lose her will to fight. She doesn't understand the feeling of love and affection she has for the children because it's the first time she's ever felt anything like it. It's only when the kids and her friends are threatened by a demon that Terra musters the will to fight. Afterward, when the children realize that the Esper in front of them is actually Terra, they immediately accept this part of her without question. It's then that Terra understands what unconditional love is, and it gives her the strength to fight Kefka. Not for self-preservation, as she may have done before, but to secure the safety and happiness of the ones she loves. Terra, whose name means Earth, is seen by many others in the story as a source of power for exploitation, much like the resources a planet can provide. But she also embodies the warmth of nurturing and protection, and she is able to give as much as she receives. It seems only natural that she is at the center of Act 1 before the planet is ravaged, and that we have to earn her back to our side in the World of Ruin. After the decimation of the planet, Celes becomes the center from which everything else orbits. This is my presumption, but I believe the name Celes is supposed to be a form of celeste, as in celestial or having to do with space and the heavens. It's the opposite of Terra, where the Earth represents our life, the stars represent hopes and dreams. Celes joins us with very little of either. She, like Terra, is a magic user that is wielded as a weapon by the Empire. Where Terra comes about her powers naturally, Celes was artificially infused. Locke finds her just before her scheduled execution for betraying the Empire. I don't believe what she did was ever explained, but what's notable is that she nearly rejects his offer to be rescued. At that point, she's so filled with regret and self-loathing that she almost willingly accepts her own death. Like Terra, she craves trust, acceptance, and love. But unlike Terra, Celes knows exactly what she is and believes herself to be unworthy of these things. It's only Locke's persistent interest in her well-being that finally starts to break through to her. That's why when Kefka lies about her motivation for joining the heroes and Locke doubts her, it tears her up. One of the most famous scenes in the game is when Celes has to stand in for the opera singer and she performs the solo sung to the tune of her theme song. The lyrics are about the characters in the opera, but the subtext is that it reflects what's in Celes's heart. She sees herself as the darkness, and Locke as the stars, and their love is brighter than the sun. More of that celestial imagery, I might add. She sings that they must part, and her life goes on, but her heart won't give up. Then she tosses the roses from the stage balcony, and this exactly mirrors what happens in the world of Ruin. Celes wakes in a small house under the care of Sid, having spent a year in a coma. The scrap of land they're on is deserted, and Sid, being a tired old man, immediately falls ill. It is possible for Sid to live or die depending on whether or not you're able to find him enough healthy food. If he lives, he will thank Celes, but insist that she should not stay on the island. She should take the raft he built and go look for her friends. He sends her off on the beach to the song From That Day On. That's a fine outcome, and the story still works. But the version where he dies is far more impactful and resonates thematically with Celes's story. She is devastated by the loss, and for all she knows, nobody that she cares about is left in the world. She walks up the cliffs on the far side of the island and throws herself off in despair, mirroring the scene in the opera where she throws the flowers from the balcony. The current washes her up on the beach, where she sees a bird bandaged with a familiar-looking bandana. She recognizes it as Locke's, and it fills her with hope that he's still out there. Just like the lyrics of the opera, they are apart, and her life goes on, but her heart won't give up. Sid leaves her a note letting her know about the raft, and she floats away to the song of Forever Rachel, the melancholic version of Locke's theme. The rest of the game is pinned on the celestial hopes and dreams of one woman that she's not alone in the world. Against all odds, the friends are reunited, starting with Celes. Eventually, she does find Locke, and she learns that she is not unworthy of being loved. As I stated before, all of the cast has backstories that they struggle to overcome. Locke's is that he failed to protect Rachel, his fiancée, and it's what motivates him to go so far out of his way to save Terra and Celes. Edgar and Sabin were driven apart by the death of their father and their obligations to the kingdom, but grew into a mutual love and appreciation over the course of the game. Even Gao has a bit of a story where his father abandoned him, and he's mature enough to accept that he's okay, because he has a new adopted family. And, Strago loves his precocious granddaughter. But here's the thing. Even if the game doesn't spend the same amount of time fleshing out every single character, it is full of people finding the strength to keep going after suffering losses great and small. Thinking about the varied stories in this game reminded me of the essay Suffering Like Mel Gibson by the author Zadie Smith in a collection of essays about the COVID-19 quarantine titled Intimations, published in July 2020. The title of the essay is a reference to a meme of Mel Gibson talking to a bloody Jesus on the set of The Passion of the Christ. The version mentioned read, "Explaining to my friends with kids under 6 what it's been like isolating alone." She reflects on the nature of suffering, about how it can't really be compared from person to person. She writes, "Suffering is not relative. It is absolute. Suffering has an absolute relation to the suffering individual. It cannot easily be mediated by a third term like privilege. If it could, the CEO's daughter would never starve herself, nor the movie idol ever put a bullet in his own brain." She goes on to describe a news story she read about a 17-year-old girl that committed suicide during the quarantine because she couldn't bear that she was unable to see her friends. Which, to many people, it may not feel like a sufficient reason for such a severe action. But Zadie explains, her suffering, like all suffering, was an absolute in her own mind, and it applied itself to her body and mind as if uniquely shaped for her, and she could not overcome it. So, how does one compare living a life of servitude and manipulation to one's family being killed, to being abandoned as a child, to being the last of your species, to living with nightmares about a friend you failed? The reality is you can't, because there is no standardized unit of measurement for suffering. It may just be the time that I revisited this game giving me context, but I think it's pretty easy to draw comparisons between the world of Ruin and the world we currently live in. Not that I'm trying to be melodramatic. Life is not a video game, and the kind of destruction that happened in Final Fantasy VI is not a one-to-one comparison to the things happening now. But it sure is easy to feel like things are going awry on scales both large and small. Stories don't solve any of our problems, but we can be inspired by them, and the themes and emotional truths can resonate with us. Empathizing with fictional characters in books and movies, and vicariously experiencing their development, can be an affecting or even profound experience. Games are no different. While there have been tremendous strides in technology over the years that have enabled developers to realize their stunningly detailed visions, games have been telling complex, nuanced stories for decades. In the time before voice acting and facial motion capture, they conveyed the story through expressive sprites and blue text boxes full of translated dialogue. I realize that having grown up with this style, it's probably easier for me to roll back to this era than it might be for someone that started out on more contemporary games. But I do think Final Fantasy VI managed to hit on something special that pulled me through from the opening cinematic to the apocalypse, and from searching for friends in a devastated world to the final confrontation with Kefka. I'm not sure if Kefka was meant to be someone who was damaged by the experiments that artificially infused him with magic, or if his upbringing under a corrupt emperor taught him to be evil. Maybe he was simply like that from the start, but Kefka is a thoroughly sociopathic villain. He rejects the emperor's desire to rule over the world in favor of just destruction. Senseless, wanton destruction. I think in that final conversation before the ending battle, Kefka shows the evil that he represents. Nihilism. When he says he will destroy everything, the heroes tell him that people will keep rebuilding. Kefka responds, "Then I'll destroy those too. Why do people rebuild things they know are going to be destroyed? Why do people cling to life when they know they can't live forever? Think how meaningless each of your lives is." The heroes respond, "It's not the net result of one's life that's important. It's the day-to-day concerns, the personal victories, and the celebration of life and love. It's enough if people are able to experience the joy that each day can bring." Kefka taunts, "And have you found your joy in this nearly dead world of ours?" And emphatically they reply, "Yes." Then each member of the team responds with their reasons. And none of those reasons are like things. They're all rooted in people and relationships. Everyone on the team found reasons to keep living in each other and the people around them. Yes, even Strago and his precocious granddaughter. Is it a trope at this point that JRPGs are all about destroying gods with the power of friendship? Absolutely. But the truth buried in that idea, that people working together and leaning on each other can overcome seemingly impossible situations is fucking uplifting. The payoff of this game isn't watching Kefka dramatically crumble into dust. It's watching the heroes work together to escape the tower. It's their victory flight over the world they just saved from indiscriminate violence, and seeing the people rebuilding their towns and life continuing to grow through the cracks of suffering. It's Terra, letting her hair blow in the wind, and the birds flying with them. I wondered whether or not this was a game that held up, or if it was simply embalmed with nostalgia in many of our collected memories. Having replayed it, I have to say, I didn't appreciate it enough back in the day. It felt more relevant now than I ever imagined it would be. Final Fantasy VI is a goddamn masterpiece.